Even though he's only lived in River Falls for 2 years, Harley Mehlhorn has a deep appreciation for the city's history. That guides him in the work he does as the city planner, helping shape the future of River Falls by drawing on its past. It's also part of the work he's involved with as a member of the city's Historic Preservation Commission, which helps highlight and preserve the history of River Falls. On this episode of the Kinni Cast, Harley joins to share more about the role of city planner, talks about the Historic Preservation Commission's work and the upcoming celebration of the Swinging Bridge, and shares some of his favorite facts about River Falls' history. So grab your history book for this episode of the Kinni Cast with Harley Mehlhorn. Hi everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Kinni Cast. My name is Tyler Mason. I'm the communications coordinator here with the city, and it's Historic Preservation Month here in the month of May, so I thought what better way to celebrate that than by having Harley Mehlhorn, our senior planner, on the podcast. He's also the staff liaison for the Historic Preservation Commission, so we'll get into a little bit of his role as planner, and then we'll talk some history. So Harley, how are you doing today?
Living the dream, man. Awesome. Good to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you here. Let's maybe start with you. Like I said, we'll talk about planner part of it before we get into the history part. So maybe just explain a little bit about the role of a senior planner and what that involves.
Yeah, city planning is kind of an interesting field. It is, by its nature, very interdisciplinary. There we go. That's a $5 word. It touches on a lot of different technical aspects of development and then also a lot of soft skills. And it's kind of the marriage of things like engineering, law, policy, communication, governance. And it's a little bit different in every organization.
Sure.
But what I will say is one of the common threads of being a planner is really being the interface between public and private. There's a lot of different types of planners depending on the city. You have long-range planning, which is things like comprehensive plans, area plans, documents that basically lay out the future of your city. And then you have your current planners, which do day-to-day tasks like responding to inquiries. Where can I put my shed? How far set back does my addition have to be?
Sure.
What we are here at the City of River Falls is comprehensive planners, partially due to the structure of our organization. We're very lean in a great way, very efficient with staff time, but then also just due to our culture. We're very kind of many hats type of culture. We all do a lot of different things. So it's a very interesting role because one day I'll be reviewing technical sets of plans for compliance with code provisions. The next I'm at a community fundraiser, and the day after that, I'm working on code amendments to alter the law, effectively the local law. So it's a very rewarding position. It's like being a mini lawyer, a mini architect, and mini engineer all at once. So it's a very interesting position.
So you like that aspect of wearing a bunch of hats? Because I mean, that's something I enjoy about my job. We've had other people on the podcast too, but it sounds like you enjoy that as well.
I do. It keeps every day different.
Right.
It's nice to come in and have one of those, what am I going to work on today? You kind of have almost a buffet of options, right?
Yeah.
As long as you're meeting your deadlines, it's kind of pick and choose your own adventure.
Sure.
That's kind of a cool gig.
Yeah. What initially kind of sparked your interest in this type of work?
I wish I had one of those cool stories where it was like, when I was a kid, I wanted to be an astronaut. I grew up to be an astronaut. I had no idea where I was going. I thought I was going to be, initially I wanted to be a diplomat for the federal government. And I even went through a whole program for it. I got in touch with ambassadors and our foreign service officers, FSOs as they're called. But I really fell into it, to be honest with you. I've always knew that I wanted to do something with government.
Sure.
I just felt called to civil service. How I fell into planning in particular was honestly just an internship. I was going to college. I was between jobs. I just got done working at various very high pressure sales positions, and I knew that wasn't for me. And so I saw a posting for the city of Chandler, Arizona, 15 hours a week, $16 an hour, come in, scan documents, and that's it. And that's what it was. I got in, and this was just pre-COVID, so this would have been a couple months before the pandemic hit.
Sure.
And I had kind of a many small careers before that. Year and a half, little trysts into different fields. But as soon as I started working in the government office, something clicked. It was just fascinating reading over these old documents from as far back as the 50s, 60s, and 70s, these zoning documents that outline history and people and players. They're almost like little books, about these locations, and there's dramas to them. There's almost these names that keep coming up, attorneys, mayors, notable residents, like actors on a stage.
Right.
So it kind of told the story of the city, and I fell in love with it.
Huh.
And the pandemic hit. Initially, everything slowed down, and then everything accelerated. So Chandler needed help. They were down a couple of planners, and they said, well, we got this intern. Maybe we can give him, a couple small tasks to do.
Sure.
And I guess I did those tasks well, because I went from being an intern to all the way up to a city planner, which is about 4 steps above that, because planning in different cities sometimes has these kind of ladder steps in about 2.5 years of work. So it was kind of a rapid fire baptism by fire into the field. But I've never looked back. It's a wonderful career, and although I didn't have this crazy long journey that led me here, this innate desire to be a planner, I'm very happy that I fell into it.
You don't miss scanning documents all day?
There's something therapeutic about it, man.
Yeah, you put in the headphones and...
That's exactly what it was. Podcast or an audiobook and just do the task.
Yeah.
So, although some tasks we do nowadays are repetitive, plot plan reviews, certain types of review, you get that same kind of like repetitive, almost like Zen flow state.
Right.
So they're, again, going to the mini hats thing. That's a cool part of working here.
So you mentioned coming from Chandler, Arizona before you joined the city of River Falls. How does that work? Similar between the two cities that you worked for, and maybe what are some of the biggest differences? I assume maybe just the size of the two is a pretty obvious one.
It's funny you say that. So working in Chandler, growing up in Chandler too, I grew up for a lot of my younger years there. I consider it in many ways my hometown. It's referred to as small town Chandler. Chandler thinks it's this little tiny city government. A small town of 300,000 people. It's bigger than Minneapolis, man. Like it's population-wise, it's bigger than Minneapolis, and it's almost bigger than Minneapolis and St. Paul combined. Certainly is when you consider the neighboring, cities and things. So the difference primarily, yes, is volume. We had 8 to 10 planners on staff plus management, which is actually lean for that. Chandler was also a lean organization. It was lean for that size of government. Like Phoenix, for instance, has a cohort of 120 planners or more. And they get down to like your entire job is just reviewing slopes on this one part of town. And that's what you do for 60 years. For those kind of million plus communities, you have to have that kind of, the interesting thing is it kind of scales kind of quadratically with population. As far as the complexity and the demand in a given geographic area. So some of the biggest differences certainly are volume, but then also scope and siloing, right? So when you get big enough, you have to silo. It's kind of just part and parcel of having an effective organization. You can't have everybody wearing all the hats, right? Because then, it's just kind of chaos once you get to a certain size. So I'm blessed here that I'm able to do a lot of things in my day-to-day task and week to week and month to month. I did probably far less discrete tasks in Chandler, less distinct things. But the things that we did do were much deeper, if that makes sense. Not in the sense of meaning, but in the sense of depth of review. Chandler was an aesthetics first community versus River Falls is, and this is in no way to create a negative or positive comparison. River Falls is very much community, nature, and people first. Right. Chandler, just due to, again, the size of the code and how it had to be applied, was very much design standards first. So, here, my daily task might be talking to a couple developers, an attorney, architect, and talking about the macro of a site, kind of the whole site layout. In Chandler, I might have spent an afternoon talking about a dormer color or a trim color on a window and scheduling a meeting for it. So, you kind of get
nitty-gritty details,
Correct. And the thing is, the community was very high caliber, right? It was seen as a very desirable community, and they wanted to keep that city beautiful aesthetic to it, right? Wanted to keep Chandler desirable and kind of branded, so to speak. And that is one similarity, though, that both River Falls and Chandler, despite the size difference, are both strong communities with a strong brand. They're both communities that are, intent on serving people first. And you'll find a lot of the same values and missions between the two organizations, which is why, it wasn't going from one employer to another because of culture. It was going from one place to another. I think, although I changed sizes of community, I'm privileged that both the cities I've worked for have both been very ethical, very grounded, and very forward-facing organizations.
And you've talked about just working on a lot of different things and kind of what that entails with the role here. But I'm curious, maybe what your favorite projects you've worked on so far during your time with the city have been, if you have any off the top of your head.
Yeah, I think I'll separate that into two buckets. I have the
Sure.
like kind of development, current planning,
Hmm.
like we touched on earlier side of things. I've loved all the projects I've worked on. Some have been a little more involved than others. Some have been a little bit more, you know, complicated and complex than others. But I will say, I think one of my favorite projects here has been Sycamore 2.
Hmm.
I do have a passion for helping the community and trying to, as a planner, to facilitate with our private development partners development that'll serve our community.
Hmm.
So Sycamore 2 is a very very niche housing type. It's for aging populations, age in place, and then also having some memory care
Right.
associated with it. Red's Place is another project that's still ongoing. I'm very passionate about that. Hopefully, eventually getting constructed. That is for a Red's Place facility would be for adults with autism
Right.
to serve as a kind of a second place
Sure.
for them and supportive care. I think although I've worked on some impressive projects here, 90 unit subdivisions, multi-$100 million valuations for the site, the project,
Hmm.
the improvements. I think the most important ones to me personally have been the small businesses that I've impacted,
Sure.
that I've been able to help, get a foothold into the community. Big Fish Performance on Lawson, they help the big fish bat. It's kind of a batting
Oh yeah.
facility.
Okay. Sure.
That was one of my first projects here, and to this day, it was one of my favorites. It wasn't complex. There wasn't crazy analysis needed or skills as a planner. It was
Yeah.
just helping a small business find a spot, do what they needed to do, and improve it. And I get a lot of personal fulfillment out of that versus some of the bigger projects where you're working with more big name, big box brands that, that
Hmm.
that build cookie cutter homes. Nothing wrong with that. Houses are needed.
Right.
But what really touches my heart is the business owners, the small mom and pop shops, the home occupation permits. Somebody starting a home business.
Right.
Those are the things that stick out to me and keep me coming back every day.
Sure. And it seems like one of the other things you've been passionate about, at least in my interactions when we've worked together, is your time as the staff liaison with the Historic Preservation Commission, like I mentioned off the top. Maybe we could just start out by sharing what the HPC does and how it operates.
Absolutely. The Historic Preservation Commission, the HPC, is a city board that is specifically focused on the preservation, the conservation, and the celebration of River Falls history and historic resources. HPCs are very common amongst basically all states, all counties, and any city of decent size usually has an HPC, especially if they have some sort of frontier or revolutionary background.
Mm-hmm.
The further west you go out, it's a little bit less common just because of the later development
Sure.
patterns. But I actually have a long history with HPC. I started as the historic preservation officer, actually, or the interim historic preservation officer for the city of Chandler.
Hmm.
And I actually helped write the HP ordinance for Chandler and facilitate that. And historic preservation commissions, primarily, they have a statutory function depending on the state, which is to be a recommending body to the State Historic Preservation Office, otherwise known as SHPO. And almost every state has a SHPO, and they report in turn to the Department of Interior, in which the Secretary of the Interior is the overseer of the National Register of Historic Places,
Okay.
which that is pretty serious business because there's a
Right.
tax break with that if it's a residentially occupied property.
Sure.
There are certain major incentives from a government assistance perspective if you get nationally registered. So
Right.
HPC in that aspect has that statutory role,
Mm-hmm.
but then they also have a very important cultural role in the communities that they're in. They're usually staffed with very passionate individuals. I've been involved in a lot of different industries in planning because we touch so many different things and there's so
Right.
many different types of planners. I have never seen the passion that I see in HPC in another type of planning.
Interesting.
The people on the board, whether it be in Chandler or especially here, are just so deeply rooted in the community. They love the community. They love the history.
Yeah.
They love celebrating it and honoring it and showing it. And so they're also cultural custodians. So that's a little bit about HPC. They do a number of other things. I can point out one big thing that they do is
Yeah.
with the budget that they're allotted from the city fund every year. They do historic interpretive signs. You might have seen one at Glen Park,
Yep.
and we have another now, which will be commemorated. We're going to talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's right on the Heritage Trail north of City Hall as you're kind of coming up where that interim kayak drop is.
Kind of by the garage, for those who know the garage bicycles. Yep.
Exactly correct. Yep, along the trail there. That's another sign they did. So, they're also doing interpretation of history for the community and investing in the future of River Falls history.
Yeah, and one of them, you mentioned the signage is relating to bridges in the city, and the swinging bridge is one of the places in River Falls that the HBC is working to celebrate its 100th anniversary. Depending on when people are listening to this, hopefully you're listening to it ahead of Saturday, May 9th, because there's the celebration at Glen Park from 3 to 5 p.m. to celebrate the swinging bridge. So if you're listening before then, we'd love to have you stop on down and come check some of that out. But maybe just share a little bit about the bridge's history and its significance in River Falls, because that's something that I personally don't know much about. Obviously, I've seen some old pictures of it, but if you just want to maybe share about the history of it.
Yeah, absolutely. The swinging bridge is one of the oldest continually standing improvements in River Falls. There were older bridges, but they have since been torn down. It's one of the oldest continually passage bridges in the city. Originally constructed 1925, so we're just over the 100-year mark on it, by the Minneapolis Bridge Company. The River Falls Improvement League, which is a primarily women's organization, or was involved with enhancing and beautifying city parks and infrastructure, helped raise the initial cost for it, which was about $4,800 in 1925 money, which today would be, give or take, $90,000 to $96,000.
Still sounds like a bargain.
It does sound like a bargain. We're going to be spending a lot more than that on renovations to it. I wish that was the cost. I think our city engineer would be, over the moon if that was the case. But as far as its importance, number one, from a cultural identity standpoint, Glen Park is one of our centrally located regional parks, and it's been a park for 100 years. It's been home to celebrations, weddings, parties, life events. It's seen River Falls history for 100 years, and the bridge is the primary access to it by way of downtown. It's passaged every day by hundreds of people, and it's a testament to its importance and beauty that it's one of the most common places where people take photos in River Falls. If you're visiting River Falls, I can tell you, when me and my wife came out here to see if this was going to be a fit for me, the city flew me out, and one of the places that we were attracted to is the bridge. We were walking down after eating downtown one night. We happened to see it as the sun was setting. We stepped over and just looked down at the Kinni, and it was just, 80 feet below the Kinni, the breeze blowing through the trees rustling, the bridge spanning 190 feet or something. It's impressive. And it's just beautiful. As an improvement, as a cultural touchstone, it stood up, the test of time. It still has some of the original joists under it. We just kind of put decking over it.
Sure.
So, though it's a piece of infrastructure, it's also a piece of history. So that's kind of the significance of the bridge, and part of the reason why, as you touched on the event on Saturday, 3 o'clock, celebrating the history of the bridge, there will be cake and cups and root beer.
There we
so
go.
Please come on. Yeah.
Well, and as part of that, we've been soliciting photos from residents of, whether it was graduation pictures or wedding pictures, engagements, and so it's been kind of fun to see some of those submissions coming in, and just like you said, it's a big place for people to get pictures taken for a variety of reasons. So, that's pretty cool. I guess kind of a bigger picture question for you, Harley. Why is historic preservation so important for communities like River Falls?
Yeah, I think it comes back to identity. The people of River Falls oftentimes have generational roots, whether it be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 generations in River Falls. Their great-great-grandfather came here and set roots down, whether it be from parts unknown abroad or whether it be from somewhere in colonial America that, came by. People here have roots. And celebrating those roots is important because it's hard to steer if you don't know where you've been. Every car has a rear view mirror as well as a windshield, and the rear view gives us context. And just like in any other aspect of planning, we need to understand the foundation we're built on. And there's also a cultural, metaphysical foundation of every place, and you can feel it, right? When you're somewhere where something important happened, where there is history, where there's people that have lived their lives, there's an energy in the air.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you go to Berlin, you feel it. You go to Paris, you feel it. You go to London, you feel it. You go to River Falls, you feel it.
Yeah.
You know, the people here have heritage. You walk down Main Street. I guarantee if you built Main Street 1-to-1, brick to brick today, it wouldn't feel the same.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about it.
Yeah.
You know, there's something about old places that have been lived in that have weathered the test of time.
Right.
And so I think historic preservation is important for communities like River Falls especially, because we're also a small town. You know, there's not going to be these major historians coming by and writing heroic books about us.
Ken Burns might do a documentary. You never know.
Maybe,
Yeah.
sure, maybe. Yeah. But, you know, so we have to document and celebrate our own history. And that's exactly what the Historic Preservation Commission, and by extent, the people they represent, which is the community of River Falls, are doing. And it's important even for people like me who have recently come here to River Falls in 2 years ago, because understanding, again, the context of where we are, it helps me honor the culture, traditions, and customs of the community, because I'm coming in as somebody from the outside, and understanding the history helps me be welcomed in, because I'm then part of the community and the lineage, the long lineage and history of people coming to River Falls for a better life.
Yeah, no, that's really well said, and some great analogies there. As we've talked about the history of River Falls, I know you mentioned some of the national and state historic registers. Just curious, as you think about all the history of River Falls, do you have any favorite historic facts or stories that you've learned in your time doing some of this work?
You know, there's a few. I've honed in on two. One is some of the original settlers had to snowshoe from Hudson to River Falls midwinter.
Wow.
And just thinking about the depths of snow in the 1860s, 1850s, 1840s, going through so many miles.
Right.
I mean, that must have been brutal, and they had to do it in one go. You know, that there was no trails, there was no roads. So that's just one small kind of thought. But as far as a fun fact goes, there was a very short period in the 1860s, and it's well recorded. River Falls well outproduced Minneapolis in flour mill production.
Huh, interesting.
Kind of an odd industry fact, but there was a time that we were the leading regional flour producer in the 1860s, because the settlement timeline for all of the communities in kind of the whole Hudson Valley going out into the Twin City Metro is kind of similar. You know, you don't have any 1600 settling stories.
Right.
So everything's kind of clustered between early 1800s to late 1800s. So I think that's kind of a fun one. It's random.
Yeah.
But it's well recorded in the documents as far as the industry logs go.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I had not heard that, so that is pretty interesting. So yeah, good to know that. I guess the last question for you, Harley, we ask this of everyone on the podcast, but as you think about the work here you do, what impact do you hope your work will have on the people of River Falls?
That's a really good question. I think I want to have a silent impact in the positive on the community. My life's goal is to be an invisible good, because as a planner, we're really a conduit. We take the will of the council, and the council serves the community, so by extent the will of the community, and we translate that into the built environment. So really I see myself in many ways as a translator, and a good translator is invisible. So my hope is to execute the will of the community as best I can with the knowledge I've gained over my years of technical experience, to translate it into something that keeps River Falls a place people want to keep coming to. And clearly it is, because our population growth, our community surveys, our natural resources, our people, we are a thriving, beautiful community. And I hope, even if it's by a fraction of a percent, I can keep that rolling in my daily duties. And by the end of my career, have done something that is invisibly felt, just like the energy of the places that are lived in. So that's my hope.
Awesome. Yeah, I love it. And that's a great place to wrap it up. So Harley Mehlhorn, Senior Planner and a Staff Liaison for the Historic Preservation Commission, thanks so much for sharing about your work and about the history of River Falls and giving us a little bit of history lesson.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Tyler.
And thank you to everybody for listening to this episode of the Kinni Cast. If you don't already subscribe, be sure to hit the subscribe button on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you find your podcasts. You can also get it at the city website at rfcity.org. Until next time, have a great day, River Falls.